Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of our interaction system. As promised, we're going to set up our components, and in the next episode, we'll take care of our widgets. So I'm going to open up my AC Interaction Manager component, and then I'll select Open Full Blueprint Editor. If you don't see this, that's completely fine. We're just going to jump right in. I'll then reset my windows a bit here. Great. And we'll need two variables. The first one will be our item pool. So this variable will store all of the interactables that the actor is currently overlapping. So basically, it's saying these are the items that can be interacted with. And we want to store each item within this array. I'm going to change the variable type to be actor, object reference, and then I'll change the type to be an array. Next, I'll make this variable private because we don't need to access this variable directly like that. Instead, we're going to utilize encapsulation, and I'll create a getter function called getItemPool. I'll then drag this variable in, drag off of the pin right here, and drag it to the input of the function, and it will automatically create a return node. And next, we can just connect it up, highlight this, and rename the output to be return value. Next, I'll make this function pure, and that is all. The second variable we'll need for this will be our interaction notify widget. And this would be our interaction notify display widget, not the interaction notify as a singular. So I'm going to search for that. WB why can't I find it? Did I not name it WB? Yeah, I did. Okay, I'm thinking the engine just needs to be refreshed. So if I double click on this, save it, and then open here, compile and search again, I should find it. Yeah. I'll then select object reference, and I'll also make this private. Great. Now let's create the rest of the functions. Let's create a function called create interaction notify widget, and this will set up this variable as we just created it. Great. What I'm going to do is drag this variable in, get it, right-click, and convert this to a validated get. And from the isNotValid entry, I'll do create widget. Basically, what we're saying is, if this is not already created, create it. I'll then select the class, which is WB interact notify display. I'll then set this variable reference to the return value of our create widget node. And lastly, I'll drag off and search for add to viewport. So we'll add it to the screen. Next, I'll call my return node at the end, and I'll duplicate this and connect it to the isValid pin right here. Because if it is valid, then we don't want to do anything. Just exit the function. Our next function, we can probably take care of the adding items to this pool and removing them. So I will create the remove function first. Remove item from pool. And I'll get my item pool. I'll drag off and search for contains. So if the item pool contains the item that we are trying to remove, only then can we remove it. I'll then drag this entry of our contain node to the input of the function, and I'll rename it to be item to remove. I'll then copy the entry text, drag off, and paste so we can get it as a local variable. I'll then hold B on my keyboard and left click to create a branch. So if the item to remove is within the item pool array, then we want to remove it. So I'll then duplicate these two variables, drag off from the item pool, and I'll search for remove item. And the item to remove will be this item to remove variable. And lastly, I can add my return node. And I'll drag this Boolean output to the output of my function. Next, I'll duplicate this return node, connect it to the false, and leave it unchecked. Great. Next, I'll duplicate this remove item from pool function, and I'll call it add item to pool. Really simple stuff. Now this one is going to be slightly different. So I'm going to make a little bit of space. And first thing I want to do is drag off of the contains return value and do a not Boolean. And then I'll connect this to the condition of my branch. The item to remove entry text, I'll call this item to add. This will be grayed out, so we can delete this, drag off again, and search for item to add. Basically, what we're checking here is if the item to add is not already in the array, only then can we add it. So I'm going to duplicate this variable here and replace this previously created one from the last function. I'll delete this remove node, and I'll search for a add node. Actually, let's do an add unique. All right. And this will be our item to add. Connect this here. And for the return value, we can just set this one to be true and leave this one unchecked. And just like that, we have two awesome functions. We can access the pool whenever we need to. We can create the interaction notify widget, which we can just connect to the event begin play right now. Something we should do is debug our item pool so we know when items are being added. So I'm just going to drag off and search for length, so we can get the length of this array. From the event tick, I'll drag off and search for print string. I'll then change the color to something like white and the duration to be 0, because we don't want to be spammed with a lot of messages to the left of our screen. I'll then drag from the int string and do an append. And for the A entry, I'll do item pool text. For the B entry, I'll do a space, a colon, and another space. And I'll add another pin and connect the length to C. Great. Now, we know that we are creating this. This definitely works. We can see if our items can be added and removed soon. But for now, let's see if our item pool is being printed on the screen. So to test this, we'll need to open up our third-person character. And I'll navigate to the Components tab to the top left, select Add, and I'll search for AC Interaction Manager. As you can see, we don't have any variables being shown here because everything is private. Next, if I hit play, you can see item pool is 0. Great. So we know that that functionality is reading just fine. Let's head back to the AC Interaction Manager component, and let's take care of a few more things, such as the functionality to actually attempt the interaction. But in order to do that, we'll need to access some variables like our enum and how long would it take for an hold interaction to complete. So what we can do to save ourselves the time is head over to our components folder and open up item settings. Open the full blueprint editor, and we'll create a few variables that we'll need to access. The first one will be the interaction type. And this will be of type enum e interaction type that we created. I'll then create another, and this will be our max held time. So how long do we want to hold our key before the interaction completes? And this variable type will be float. And next, we will need the item name. And this will be of type name. Great. For the default value of interaction type, I'll set it to be press. For the max held time, I'll set a default value of 1. Awesome. We can now close our character blueprints, save the item settings component, and head over to our AC interaction manager component. We'll create the function to attempt the interaction. So I'll call this attempt interaction. This won't take any inputs or outputs, but we can just simply get the item pool. I'll then ensure that is not empty. So only if it contains an item can we access this function. I'll then get a reference to entry 0 from the pool. In this case, we'll get a copy. So whichever was the first item that will be overlapped, or whichever is the closest. I'll then drag off here and do an isValid pin. So only if the item is valid, because there's a possibility that you would pick this item up and the engine would then read, hey, there was something here, I'm still reading it, and I will give you an error. So to avoid that error, we are adding the isValid pin. isValid note, sorry. Now, just like what I talked about just now, we'll need to access the item settings component. So I'm going to search for get components by class. And I'll select my AC item settings. I'll then duplicate this isValid node and connect this right here. Now you may be asking, why not just do an isValid boolean and do an and connect both of them? I learned the hard way that this still gives me the error. All right, so here we can drag off and search for interaction type. Awesome. And we can do a switch on E interaction type. And now we can decide what to do when our interaction type is none, press or hold. Now, if it's none, that means we don't want to do anything. So we can just give ourselves an error that says, hey, our interaction type is equal to none. That means we have an error and you should fix it. Now, let's see. If the interaction type is press, then we simply want to add our notify to the item container, well, the interact notify container, and then we can complete our interaction by calling our interaction notify event. So what I'm going to do is open up AC item settings, and I'll create a new event dispatcher, and I'll call this on interaction completed. Something I should do, or we should do, I should say, just for modularity, is give ourselves access to this component and the owner of this component as well. So in AC item settings, with the interaction dispatcher selected, I'll head up to inputs and add a new parameter. And I'll call this first one owner, and this will be of type actor. So this will be our player character. And another parameter for the AC interaction manager, just in case we need it later. I'll then copy this text and search for it. Great. We'll need to access our notify container later, but for now, we can simply call our event dispatcher from the return value right here. So we can drag off and search for call or interaction completed. We can connect this to press, reroute this pin a bit, And for the owner, we can drag off and search for get owner. And the AC interaction manager, we are already here. So we can just search for get a reference to self. Now, if this is a hold interaction, then we'll need to update our held progress and then complete the event. So to get that, we'll need to access our interaction display widget, which I'm thinking, right, so we'll need to access that from the item settings. And that will be this widget here, interaction display. So we can create a variable for that in here called interaction display. Select the WP interaction display object reference, and I'll make this variable private, create a function for it. And repeat the steps just like the get item pool function. Make it pure and rename the output. Awesome. We can now head over to our AC interaction manager again. From this return value, we can get the interaction display. And from the interaction display is where we'll be updating our held progress. So to save ourselves the time, I'm just going to head over to WB interaction display, head over to my graph, and create a function called updates held progress. Now, we're not going to fill this function out just yet, but just going to be creating it so that we can slot it in right here. This will take an input of type float, and I'll rename this to be max held time. It also requires an output of type Boolean, and we can rename this to be return value. Save. And now let's head back to our interaction manager component, and we can call the function update how to progress. I'll just connect hold right here. All right, so we have a nice shortcut. And from here, we can also get our max held time variable and connect this to the input of the function. Add a branch. So only if the return value is true, that means we have reached our maximum capacity for our progress bar based on the maximum held time. And only then we can complete our interaction. Awesome. Let's see. Am I forgetting anything? Okay. Well, yeah, we'll need to remove the item from the pool, the item pool, because even though we pick this up and we destroy the actor, this array will still have an understanding of what's going on. So I'm going to call the function remove item from pool. Now the item to remove would be this one. So we can drag this all the way over here and connect it. Now you could have created a local variable, but instead of creating anything, I can just do this. It's not like we're going to be in here, you know, looking at it all the time. Awesome. Well, we're done with this function. We can head over to another, which would be to reset our character's interaction. So just in case the character is holding input and he releases, and it's a hold interaction and not a press, we want to reset our progress bar. So I'll call this reset interaction. Again, we'll check if our item pool contains anything. Is not empty. Just as a safety precaution. Then I'll get my item pool and do a for each loop with break. Let's just ensure that this item is actually valid so that when we interact with something and we release our key, even though it may be removed, then this would just fail. It's good to give yourself the security to avoid any unnecessary errors or warnings from the engine. From the array elements, we can get our component by class. So we can get the item settings component. Make sure that is valid as well on the actor. Again, just as a safety precaution. And we can access the interaction type. Now, if this interaction type is a press, or if it's none, then we just want to break the loop and end the function. Complete it. So from the none pin, I'm going to drag this all the way back and connect to break. Create a nice little reroute pin for it. And I'm going to connect press to this reroute pin as well, because we don't need to do anything if it's a press or if it's a none. Just stop. Now, from the return value from our get component by class node, we can access the interaction display widget again. And this time we'll need to call our reset functionality for our UI, so we can reset the held progress. So I'm going to head back to interaction display, create another function called reset held progress. This won't take any inputs or outputs. We'll just call the function and connect this to the hold input. Well, execution pin. Great. Now that we have that, all we'll need to do is access our input action and connect our functions. So I'm going to right click and search for IA_interact. And I'll call attempt interaction, connect this to triggered. And for reset interaction, connect this to completed and cancelled. Now this event tick is just for debugging, so there's no need to have this organized and put away. So we can just leave everything all nice and neat right here. Great. Let's see. I believe this is all of the functionality for this component. Actually, we have one more. Let's create this now. Add notify to container. This will take an input of type text, and I'll rename this to be item name. So this is what's going to be called when we complete interaction, and we want to display whatever item that we just picked up, display its name on the screen to give the player some feedback, and we understand which item this is. In here, I'm going to get my interaction notify widget, right click and convert this to a validated get, again, just as safety. And we'll call the in UI function, which is add notify to container. So I'm going to copy this name, open up my interaction notify display widget, head over to the graph and create that function. This function as well would need the entry variable of type text, and I'll call this item name. With that done, back in the interaction manager, we can call that function. And for the item name, we can simply drag off and search for item name. So we can access this input variable and call our return node. Just like that. I'll then duplicate this return node and connect this to the is not valid pin. If it's not valid, then exit the function, which it would never be not valid, but just in case. So something we should do is in the attempt interaction function, we should add this add notify to container function. And we'll add it before we complete the interaction, because when we complete, there's a possibility we could be destroying the actor, and we want to show the actor's details on screen before we destroy it. So I'm going to call this function, Now I'm thinking I should place it, yeah, I should place it right there. So I'm just going to bring this branch to the left, bring this to the right, and I'll place this function right here. I'll reroute this a bit because I don't like when things are crisscrossing like that. All right, and I'll connect the true here as well. For the item name, we can access that from right here, actually. And I'll change this variable type from name to text, just so that we don't need to do a conversion or anything. So I'm going to head over to item settings, select the variable item name, and change it to a text. Compile, head back, and just connect this up. Great. And that completes this component. We have everything that we need. I'll leave this debug event tick here for now, so that when we actually overlap an item in the world, we can see the length be incremented and decremented whenever we begin and end overlap of each actor. In the next episode, we are going to do the item settings component. Now, this will be a little bit more complicated, but we can handle it. And lastly, we'll take care of the widget, or maybe we can slip everything into one video. That's it for this one, guys. Bye.